What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and every year some of the biggest league winners in fantasy football are breakout wide receivers, guys who are in their first few years in the NFL, who take huge steps forward and finish as top 12 to 24 options in fantasy. Last year, we had Malik Neighbors finish as the wide receiver 6. Brian Thomas Jr. finished as the wide receiver 11. Both guys rookies, finishing as wide receiver 1s in fantasy football for the first time in their careers, along with wide receiver 2s like JSN and Ladd McConkey, who helped a lot of teams down the stretch for those playoff runs. Now, I don't do a lot of patting on the back, and I even kind of hate when people do this on Twitter of, I told you to draft these 5 wide receivers last year. Here's who I say to draft this season. But it's too good to not flaunt it. Last year in this exact video where we talked about breakout wide receivers, I recommended Malik Neighbors, JSN, Brian Thomas Jr., and then I'll take a half slight W on Rashee Rice, who before the knee injury was looking like an absolute monster. So today we're going to run this back and talk through 7 wide receivers you need to draft before they break out in 2025, with the goal of finding the wide receivers this season that are going to finish top 12 in points per game for the first time in their career. As always, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and let's set some quick parameters on what I would classify as a breakout receiver. Again, these are receivers who are yet to finish as a top 12 point per game scorer. I will say JSN was a fine W last year. They don't have to hit top 12. Really, top 12 to top 24 for these guys would be a good hit. And we're going to keep these to wide receivers inside of their first 4 seasons. This is from Ryan Heath's research last year in his age curves article, finding that most wide receiver breakouts happen from a wide receiver's rookie season through their 4th season in the NFL. So we're going to keep it to those 4 draft classes. And our first player we're going to talk about here is going to be Xavier Worthy. He's going on Underdog as the 405, as the wide receiver 22 off the board. And he is going to be somebody we're going to go back to the well on, right? Last year, you can see who he recommended. He was up there, him and Rashee Rice. Xavier Worthy didn't quite work out, but I want to invest in this Chiefs offense. Before we even talk about Xavier Worthy, let's talk about Patrick Mahomes, this offense. And I just can't believe that after losing in the Super Bowl in such defeated fashion, however you want to say that, to the Eagles, it was really ugly, that they just want to run back the same playbook of let's have a really boring offense, let's squeak out W's, let's have a really tough time all around of winning games, not playing fun football. And when we talk about Patrick Mahomes, I think, yes, we've had back-to-back seasons now of Mahomes being below his career level, but let's also think about who Patrick Mahomes is. This is somebody that when we look at through 112 career starts at quarterback, which is what Mahomes is at this point in his career, he clears Matthew Stafford, the next best, by over 1,000 passing yards. He is the most prolific passer of all time. If we look at FanDuel odds in terms of the most likely quarterback to lead the league in passing yards, Mahomes is second behind only Joe Burrow. It wouldn't be all that shocking for Mahomes, after 2 down years, at age 29, heading into age 30 here, just had a rebound where he throws for, again, like 4,500 passing yards, mid-30s passing touchdowns. And if that happens, we are going to want these pass catchers, namely Xavier Worthy, who last year had a disappointing season just because we were drafting him highly. He was supposed to be very good, and he was kind of up and down. He scored a lot of touchdowns. He wasn't very good per route. You can see here below this tweet. I'll break down the tweet in a second, but in terms of the rookie receiver report, where I break down rookies in terms of their targets per out run, yards per out run, first downs per out run, and PFF grade. So that gives us their volume per route, their efficiency per route, do they move the chains on a per route basis, and their PFF grade. And across the bottom is what Xavier Worthy did in the regular season. It was not good, right? When you compare him to the other high-end wide receiver prospects last year, dead last pretty much across the board. 1.24 yards per out run is god-awful. But when we peel back the curtains a bit on Xavier Worthy, he really found his groove down the stretch. Over a 209 route sample, that's a lot. That is more than just a flash in the pan of his last 7 games in his rookie year, where a lot of the time we see guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Rashee Rice, Ladd McConkey turn it up down the stretch. We saw that with Xavier Worthy, where he ran 209 routes over his last 7 games. So that's going to be, I think, week 15, 16, 17, 18, divisional, conference, Super Bowl. I mean, he goes toe-to-toe with Brian Thomas and Ladd McConkey here. 24% targets per out run over that stretch, right in line with Brian Thomas. 2.28 yards per out run, that's right in line with those elite rookies up there. 11.5% first downs per out run, leads the entire list. 84.3 PFF grade, just under Malik Neighbors and Brock Bowers. It is super impressive. Again, I know that he had, or not again, but it's something that I have to keep answering to, is that yes, he had his biggest blow-up game in garbage time versus the Eagles. But again, that is the Super Bowl versus one of the best defenses in the league. And even then, we're still talking about a 209 route sample over 7 games. So it's not too much of the weight going towards just that one game. And over that span as well, if you take out Week 18 where KC rested their starters, I think Xavier Worthy played a few snaps in that game. He was at 21.6 points per game. And to me, this stretch signals what his true upside is in this offense, which is what gets me very excited. Now, on top of that, people have cited that his 8-out was lower, and he definitely benefited from Rashee Rice being hurt last year. But I also think that it was almost what had to happen based on how off the connection was with Mahomes on the deep ball. If we look at this tweet from Scott Barrett, in terms of percentage of open air yards that were uncatchable, where a receiver had a step of separation. So this is getting open downfield. Xavier Worthy was on pace with Adonai Mitchell and Rome Odunze for the most uncatchable air yards, meaning that on deep passes to Xavier Worthy, we were getting Caleb Williams rookie year or like Anthony Richardson last year type of accuracy. I don't personally believe that Mahomes is cooked at age 30 at this point. I think that he's still in the prime of his career. We saw Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Tom Brady have some of their most prolific and best passing seasons after age 30. There's just no way that Mahomes all of a sudden now can't throw the deep ball after what we've seen in the past. So I think that that's going to bounce back. We saw as well down the stretch him really find his form, Xavier Worthy. And he's a very fun player where I think that he can be a deep threat. He can be a low 8-out gadget guy. You can give him handoffs. And I think he can just win in a lot of different ways. And I think that the elephant in the room is Rashee Rice. What does this look like when Rashee Rice is back in the picture? And I truly don't know. What I will say is that we've seen Mahomes prop up both Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce in the same season before. So I think that they can coexist. But there's also the Rashee Rice suspension where we just saw, as I'm recording this today, Jordan Addison get a 3-game suspension, which to me signals that Rice is going to get minimum 4 and potentially all the way up to 6, which then gives us like a 4 to 6 game runway of Xavier Worthy establishing himself as the main option in this offense. And to me, if you're already betting on Xavier Worthy being good and drafting him, then you're betting on him to make a sizable gap through those suspension weeks to still be a featured player when Rashee Rice comes back. And I'm not under the assumption that it's going to be one or the other. If Rashee Rice comes back and he's good, then I still think that Xavier Worthy can eat as well. Where, again, this is Mahomes. He's going to be one of the guys that challenges for the league lead in passing yards. I think there's going to be plenty to go around between him. We'll see if Kelce's not washed and Rashee Rice in this offense. I'm not a huge Hollywood Brown believer, but I guess he's also in the mix. Now, you are drafting on underdog Xavier Worthy, pick 41.3. That is going to be an early to mid 4th round pick, but thankfully in your home league, he's more of a 5-6 turn pick going at 56th off the board on Sleeper. Now, let's talk about my second favorite breakout wide receiver target in Tetairoa Mcmillan. We've been streaming every single night from now, August 1st, through kickoff is the goal. Make sure you check them out. I'm trying to promote them more in videos so that you guys come hang out. I mean, it's not that you guys aren't coming, but you get what I'm saying. I should let you know, the viewer know, that I'm streaming every night from now through NFL kickoff. And we drafted this team through 5 the other night, right? I took Tetairoa Mcmillan, wide receiver 24 off the board as the 502, and you guys killed me for it. Now, Ted McMillan is going as the 404 as the wide receiver 21 on underdog, and I'm still even drafting him at that price. And here is why. This is a very, very strong and clean prospect. He goes 8th overall to the Panthers. You can see here, 3-year career at Arizona. He declares early. He's a young prospect. 700 receiving yards, 1,400, 1,300, where he was averaging over 100 yards per game in his final 2 seasons. That's about as clean as you could get. I don't have to make an excuse, right? With I love Luther Burden, but that 3rd year you have to say, oh, well, Missouri this, and he had a quarterback, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Ted McMillan was a very clean alpha wide receiver in his offense, got top 10 draft capital. He's 6'4", 219 pounds, And I think that he has more to his game than meets the eye, right? Where he comes out again, 6'4", you want to kind of put him in this Mike Evans, pure X wide receiver role. And he really is more of like I think Drake London is a decent comp in terms of a guy who can play on the inside and outside in an offense, where this is from Sharp Football Analysis. He had 16.1 yards per catch, which is really good. You also have 4.48 yards per out run from the slot, best in the class. So this is a 6'4" receiver you can move inside, and then also a 60% contested catch win rate. So this is somebody you can move all around the formation. He can win contested jump balls, and he's just a really solid player who also improved in terms of his after the catch ability last year, where he had 28 missed tackles forced, second to only Luther Burden, which is nuts for, again, a player who is 6'4", right? Making people miss at 6'4" is not easy. A lot of those guys usually have the archetype of falling down. McMillan is not that, and I do trust Dave Canales in this offense to not stick Tetairoa Mcmillan out at X and kind of do like what George Pickens did early in his career, which was really tough, where he would just run pretty much gassers the whole game, streak down the sideline. I think we're going to get creative usage for McMillan, and we fast forward to present day outside of prospect talk. McMillan is the talk of the camp here from Jordan Schultz. He's been even better than advertised, smooth, explosive, and already gaining trust from the quarterbacks. You can't take your eyes off him at practice because he's making so many big plays. To me, he is the clear wide receiver one in Carolina, which you might say, why would I want the wide receiver one in Carolina? Well, a few reasons. First of all, I like this offense to have some sneaky upside here. The defense is brutal. I'm not a big defensive guy. I could tell you who J.C. Horn is, Pat Jones, Derek Brown, and that's all I got. The rest of this defense is honestly kind of randoms. I got to be honest, I'm kind of shocked that A'Shawn Robinson is still even in the league. It should be a brutal defense that allows the Panthers offense to have to chase points for most of the game. And then also, I love the year 3 breakout upside of Bryce Young as well, where if we look at last year, after he got benched, he comes back in week 8. From then on, in terms of EPA per play, he is in the top right of this chart. You know, he is not in the bottom left with guys like Caleb Williams and Aaron Rodgers. He's in the top right where he has a pretty good EPA per play. That's just per play efficiency. And then also completion percentage over expected. So was he accurate? And he's in this range with guys like Jaden Daniels and Kyler Murray and Darnold and Justin Herbert and even like the Purdy's and Bo Nixes of the world. He's in that range. He played very well down the stretch last year. And if we can kind of carry that momentum into this year, I think that this offense has a lot of untapped upside, where from week 8 on, he also had more passing yards than CJ Stroud and Jordan Love last season, again, from that week 8 on stretch. So to me, that's very exciting. And again, like with a lot of these breakout wide receivers, you can get them much later over on Sleeper or ESPN. Tetairoa Mcmillan going at pick 62 on Sleeper as opposed to 41.1 over on Underdog, which is why it's a great place to practice for your home league draft. You hop on Underdog, you see where all these players are going when there's real money on the line. You get to your home league, and then you then leverage that, where you look up, and it's the early 6, and you're like, man, I've seen Ron take Tetairoa Mcmillan in the early 5th in a managed league, and my home league just let me get him in the 6th round. So you can kind of get a radar for where players should be going. As always, you can use promo code Rondo, match your first deposit up to $1,000. I'll have links to that in the description and the comment section down below. Now, with Tetairoa Mcmillan, I will add, the point of this video is we're looking for guys who can finish as a top 12 wide receiver in points per game. And it seems rich for a wide receiver that is a rookie to do that. But again, last year we saw that happen with Malik Neighbors. We saw it happen with Brian Thomas Jr. And really, if we look since 2020, we've had 5 rookie receivers finish as a wide receiver 1, and we've had 4 rookie wide receivers finish as a wide receiver 2. That's about 1 per year finishing as a top 12 option and 1 per year finishing as like a wide receiver 13 to 24. To me, it wouldn't shock me at all if Tetairoa Mcmillan was the guy who could finish as a wide receiver 1 in this class. But if you're not as excited about him over an entire season, he also has late season upside that we see with these other rookie wide receivers, where from weeks 9 on, if we look back to 2010, a lot of these rookie wide receivers put up monstrous numbers down the stretch, where Elijah Moore had 20.1 points per game, and he wasn't even that good. Odell Beckham, 28.3 points per game. Mike Evans, 19.4. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 19.3. So he has the upside to, if he starts slow, he can still crush down the stretch of a season, or he could just be that guy on day 1 and be the next Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, day 1 contributor. And when we're talking about rookies, we really don't know. We can say one thing about their prospect profile, but it's a whole other beast when they get on the field and they show us what they really are at the next level. Now, our third breakout wide receiver candidate here is going to be George Pickens. He's going at the 4.11 as the wide receiver 26 over on Underdog. He is going at the 5.12 on Sleeper, so much later in your home league as well. And we're going to bring up a screenshot from the Xavier Worthy section of this video where Dak Prescott is tied with Mahomes for the second best odds to lead the NFL in passing yards. And I can't stress enough how massive of a deal that is for George Pickens, who has had nothing but slow, prehistoric offenses with bad quarterback play through his first 3 years in the NFL. And this is probably the latest we'll get in terms of breakouts. This is going to be a year 4 breakout candidate in George Pickens, but I really do think that he has the upside to be a top 12 wide receiver. Like, I truly do think that this could be very similar to what we saw from Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. I think this year's version of that very well could be Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens. Remember, last year the Steelers were 27th in passing yards, 29th in pass attempts. Last year, the Cowboys, even with a hurt Dak Prescott, were 3rd in pass attempts and 11th in passing yards. Now, yes, a new coach comes in. You have Schottenheimer, who's going to be the head coach calling plays. But even then, Mike Clay, who projects out every season or every team's volume based on the head coaching tendencies and the player tendencies, you have here 10th in dropbacks, 5th in attempts, 7th in yards, 7th in touchdowns. That is plenty left over after CeeDee Lamb at the top of this target tree. And on top of that, we're going to get more routes. Like, it sounds very simple, but George Pickens going from 31.1 routes per game last year to 37.5 is a big difference. Like, if you are scoring, 0.1 to 0.2 fantasy points per route, which I'm kind of just like spitting out there. I think honestly, most of the elite guys score like 0.5 or more. What if you're running 5 to 6 more routes per game? That could be like a 2 to 3 point per game increase just based on how many routes you're running. So we could see 6 more routes for George Pickens per game end up giving him like 2+ points per game just from pure volume, which to me is very exciting. Now, the thing with George Pickens is that we know he's a good player. When we compare him to other wide receiver 2s on other offenses who are verifiably good in terms of PFF grade, targets per out run, first downs per out run, yards per out run, he holds up versus guys like Devontae Smith and T. Higgins. The PFF grade's not there, and the first downs per out run isn't there, but I will say for first downs per out run, he was on a much worse offense. So it's hard to move the chains better than the Bengals or the Eagles did last year. But in terms of yards per out run, targets per out run, he is right in that mix as well. And we can see here success rate versus coverage, 74th percentile versus man, 83rd percentile versus press by Matt Harmon's reception perception. So this is a good player who now gets a huge situational upgrade. Moving on, our 4th breakout receiver is going to be Zay Flowers. I think to me, Zay Flowers is one of the most sneaky breakout candidates in fantasy football right now where nobody really talks about him, right? A lot of the year 3 talk is about guys like JSN, or even I love Jaden Reed as well, but no one talks about Zay Flowers, who is heading into year 3, where we see most of these breakouts happen, right? When we look at from earlier where breakouts are happening, year 3 is the year. Zay Flowers heads into year 3, attached to Lamar Jackson, and really his biggest holdup to this point is touchdowns. He only scored 4 touchdowns last year, which had him as the wide receiver 32 in points per game. But he finds himself again attached to Lamar Jackson on Vegas's 2nd highest implied scoring team in football. And this is somebody who, dating back to college, scored a lot of touchdowns. He led the ACC twice in his college career with 9 receiving touchdowns in 2020, 12 receiving touchdowns in 2022. I get he's a smaller wide receiver, but touchdowns are pretty random in terms of year to year. He's on a good offense, so the touchdown opportunity will be there, and we could see teams load the box even more on Derrick Henry, making it so that they're going to pass more in the red zone. We could also see Rashad Bateman, who had 9 touchdowns last year. What if that just swaps? If Zay Flowers gets 9 touchdowns and instead Bateman gets 4 touchdowns, all of a sudden we are cooking with a lot of gas. And I just want good players on good teams. That's what Zay Flowers represents. When we look at his reception perception, as always, shout out to Matt Harmon. Check his workout on receptionperception.com. He looked good. His success by route was strong, 70 percentile versus man, 89th percentile versus zone. He gets open against pretty much every coverage. And when we go even deeper than that and we look at first downs per out run, which is something that Ryan Heath has been talking about for years now as one of the best predictors for wide receiver breakouts, he's right in there. When we just look at sorting by first downs per out run, which never mind the idea that his PFF grade is really strong. His targets per out run is really strong. His yards per out run is really strong. You have Vlad McConkey, T. Higgins, Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Zay Flowers, Brian Thomas, Justin Jefferson, Terry McLaurin, Malik Neighbors. That is the list that he's smack dab in the middle of when it comes to first downs per out run. I just want to bet on Zay Flowers again. We're talking about a good player and a good offense you can get in the 5th round in your home leagues, underdog, ESPN, whatever. To me, just a very solid pick, especially we've been talking about a lot getting an elite quarterback. If you can get Lamar Jackson in the 3rd round and then come back around in the 5th or 6th round and grab Zay Flowers, I think that's a great stacking option to have in your league. Then our 5th breakout receiver here is Travis Hunter. The Dynasty guys are going to be sick of me talking about Travis Hunter, but I can't shut up about Travis Hunter. He's going at the 508 as the wide receiver 32 on underdog. And I will say, home leagues are pretty hip to him as well, where he is in the 60s on ESPN. I think he's in the late 50s on Sleeper. Now, what I will say, you guys might be like, well, why do you show the underdog ADP? Why do you talk about home league ADP? It's because I'm trying to appeal everybody. We're in the part of the year where people are drafting for their home league. Some of you guys are drafting with me on underdog in my nightly streams. But if you want the perfect blueprint for your home league draft, make sure to check out patreon.com/Ron Stewart, where I'll have my top 200 rankings tiered. I have my targets, my fades, all outlined, my target rounds for every player, a checklist so you can just check off players as you go. That is going to all be on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. And all of these breakout wide receivers will be highlighted in bright green so you know to draft them when you're on the clock. You'll find links to that in the description and the comment section down below. But with Travis Hunter, he was, in this class, for me, the wide receiver 1. By my prospect model, by my Dynasty rookie wide receiver rankings, and here's why. You can see his reception perception profile here, 92nd percentile versus man, 97th percentile versus zone, 97th percentile versus press. At the catch point, in my database, 95th percentile contested catch rate over his entire career, 63.3%. After the catch, in terms of missed tackles forced per reception, 94th percentile. At every stage of the route, before the catch, at the catch, after the catch, he is elite. He is truly an otherworldly alien. Even my prospect model that handles with stats that I have no way of communicating to the model that, hey, this guy didn't play full-time receiver until year 3, still had him as the wide receiver 1 in this class over a Tetairoa Mcmillan, over an Emeka Egbuka, Luther Burden, all of those guys in this class. To me, he is an alien. Now, he's lower than Tetairoa Mcmillan in redraft because he's not as clean of a projection, right? You have the weird element of him playing defense. We don't know how much defense he's going to play. We don't know if his body is going to hold up to playing defense and offense. There's just more downside with Travis Hunter, but that also means that the upside is absolutely massive with him. And we talk about round 5, round 6, we're swinging for upside. We're swinging for the fences. Like, the whole idea of this video is who could we look back on that finishes as a top 12 wide receiver in points per game? That could absolutely be Travis Hunter, because I think truly your imagination can't tell enough of the story with Travis Hunter. Even with Brian Thomas Jr. as wide receiver 1, I think Hunter could be that special. We're already getting reports here where I think that his ADP is going to rise the later we get into the summer. We had a quote today where Liam Cohen was on the Rich Eisen show where he said, Liam, ballpark how many snaps Travis Hunter is going to play. He said 80% of the snaps, which means a lot of these receivers will come off the field during running plays, so they might play 90% of the snaps and then 99% of the routes. For Travis Hunter, if he plays 80% of the snaps, we could see him play 90% plus of the routes, which is a massive, massive win. Now, I will say, take a intern's August 5th depth chart with a grain of salt, but it is interesting to me that this guy posted this today. Adam Schefter retweeted it, of Travis Hunter being one of the starting wide receivers on the depth chart, but being a rotational cornerback 3 on the defensive side of the depth chart. And for me, the way I rationalize this is it's just easier for him to make an impact on offense. Like, you can't just plug in Travis Hunter and he can change the game on defense. But on offense, when you're talking about an offense that outside of Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr. is relying on Parker Washington, Diami Brown, and Brenton Strange, you really need Travis Hunter in this offense to support Trevor Lawrence, to support kind of what they're trying to do on offense. And to me, yes, Brian Thomas Jr. is in the mix in that people love to get hung up on who's the wide receiver 1, who's the wide receiver 2. I mean, you saw in this video, I like George Pickens, who's next to CeeDee Lamb. I like Travis Hunter. I want guys who are going to be in high-volume passing offenses who are good. When we look at Mike Clay's projection for this passing offense, he has them 7th in dropbacks, 7th in attempts, 8th in completion, 9th in yards. That is plenty left over after Brian Thomas Jr. for Travis Hunter to eat as well. And to me, he provides massive, massive upside for where you can draft him in fantasy football. Then our 6th breakout wide receiver on this list is Rome Odunze. He's going at the 512 as the wide receiver 33 on Underdog, but you can get him at pick 80 on Sleeper. He is free on Sleeper. I will say, let me know if you guys think, usually Sleeper will update their rankings as the offseason goes. You guys know I do love to do videos where I talk about kind of leveraging the rankings, but I kind of want to wait until they fix them. There's no way that September 1st, Rome Odunze is 80th overall on Sleeper. There's just no way. So I am curious. I don't know if any of you guys work at Sleeper or if any of you guys are super familiar with Sleeper. When are we going to get an update to their default rankings in ADP? But anyways, the Rome Odunze, let's first talk about the kind of rare talent he was as a prospect. This is NFL's next-gen stats scouting model. Their 5 best wide receiver prospects since 2007. It is Calvin Johnson, it is Rome Odunze, Malik Nabers, Julio Jones, Jamar Chase. Then if we look at the film side of things, Daniel Jeremiah's top 150 big board from that 2024 NFL draft, he had Marvin Harrison 102, Rome Odunze 103, Malik Nabers 104. This is somebody that was squarely in the conversation for wide receiver 1 overall and potentially one of the best wide receiver draft classes I can remember. Now, that did not come to fruition this season. We look at the rookie receiver report, Rome Odunze flunked it. Bad targets per out run, bad yards per out run, bad first downs per out run, bad PFF grade. So what happened? Is he a bust? Is it already over for Rome Odunze? And I would say no, because we have to add some context for how terrible this offense was last year, right? We have Shane Waldron, Eberflus, Caleb Williams. It was a season from hell for those guys. Something that sums it up pretty well is a really good stat from Rich Rebar here saying Rome Odunze ran 144 routes where there wasn't even a target on the play. To put that into perspective, that's about 25% of Rome Odunze's routes where a sack, scramble, tipped pass, or throwaway happened. So it's really hard to pop in the rookie receiver report in terms of per route numbers when that's the kind of offense we're dealing with. And if you want to talk about even further, you have Scott Barrett here looking at uncatchable expected fantasy points percentage. So what percentage of your volume was uncatchable? He led the league last year by far with 44.8% of his volume being uncatchable. It was an absolutely brutal way to run an NFL offense. But when we start to kind of control for these things, he actually looked decent. Last year, if you take out screen sacks and scrambles, he actually went toe-to-toe with DJ Moore, who's a good NFL receiver in terms of targets per out run, yards per out run, and first downs per out run on those plays where you take out screens, which is where DJ Moore really did anything last year, was in the screen game, in the design touches game, and just as a pure wide receiver, Odunze at least matched what DJ Moore did last year. If you want to talk about some other positives as well, you have Rome Odunze leading every wide receiver with over 80 targets last year. That's a 49 wide receiver sample with a 72.2% contested catch rate. So he was very good at contested catches. He looks decent when you remove the screen game. And then also in terms of reception perception, where Matt Harmon charts Rome Odunze on a per route basis, he looked really good. 71st percentile versus man, 87th percentile versus press, whereas DJ Moore looked bad last year. Now you can kind of decide whether you think DJ Moore is washed, if he's not the player he used to be, if he was just kind of checked out last year and it showed. But you can also say, well, if he checked out last year and Ben Johnson's watching this film back and he drafts Colston Loveland and he drafts Luther Burden, how much is he going to prioritize somebody he probably doesn't have in the long view of his football team? Just a lot of things to think through with DJ Moore. And that's why Odunze is cheaper, because of course DJ Moore is the wide receiver 1 in this offense, but it wouldn't be shocking to me. I know it's crazy to say, and again, I will say for the entire video, we are thinking big. We are thinking breakout wide receivers. If I had told you guys last year, which I did, that Brian Thomas Jr. could do this despite Christian Kirk in this offense, it would sound crazy. It wouldn't shock me at all if Rome Odunze did outscore DJ Moore this year in fantasy football. This is an offense that should bounce back. The Bears have established to run 7th best offensive line. They're projected for the 15th most points by Las Vegas. You have year 2 Caleb Williams upside, and of course, Ben Johnson engineering this offense. Now, our next and last wide receiver breakout is Chris Olave, a year 4 player, just like George Pickens. He's going at the 603 on Underdog as the wide receiver 34. He's going still in the 60s over on Sleeper and in your home league, but this is somebody who's been a 2nd or 3rd round pick in fantasy football the last couple of years, and now you can get him in the 6th or 7th round, and he's verifiably a good player. And what I mean by that is on a per route basis and a points per game basis, he paces right there with his classmates in Drake London and Garrett Wilson through the first 3 years of their careers. You are drafting Drake London in the second round. You are drafting Garrett Wilson in the third round. You are drafting Chris Olave in the 6th or 7th round. And on top of that, Garrett Wilson, who, I like Garrett Wilson, but he also has questionable quarterback play. But you're getting a massive discount on Chris Olave, who also has bad quarterback play himself. Now, the reason you're drafting him round 6, round 7 is because the bad offense is baked in and the concussions are priced in. But I think there's some sneaky upside with Kellen Moore in this offense, where they are projected for the second worst scoring offense by Vegas. But Kellen Moore has ranked top 10 in neutral pace, so how fast he's calling plays every time that he's been a play caller, dating all the way back to Cowboys offensive coordinator roles in 2019. When we look at Mike Clay's projections, he has them 11th in dropbacks, 11th in pass attempts, which does put them at 16th in passing yards. That should be enough to make Chris Olave a strong top 24 option this year. And this offense should be fun with Kellen Moore, who has hovered around 40% to 52% in terms of shifts and motions on dropbacks, whereas Chris Olave probably had a little bit of that with Kubiak last year, but of course he gets hurt. Before that, the Saints were dead last in motion and shift rate on dropbacks. And Chris Olave on these plays averages 2.73 yards per out run. That's a really strong number. So it's an ugly offense. Do we know who their quarterback's going to be week 1? No. But I think there is some upside with Kellen Moore for there to be enough volume and enough fun schematic things going on for Chris Olave to pay off at his ADP. But that's going to do it for us today. A little bit of a long-winded one for just 7 players, but you guys know I love to get in the weeds on these receivers. Regardless, hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a like, subscribe if you're new. As always, you guys know what it is. If you want to draft with us every single night over on Underdog, make sure you check them out. Use promo code RONDOM at your first deposit up to $1,000. And of course, the draft guide is out if you want access to that before your home league draft coming up. Patreon.com/Ron Stewart. But if you can't support there, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like